Today we are going to solve a murder case in the small town of Rockland, Maine. Elizabeth Knight was found dead in her home with a gunshot wound in her back. Elizabeth was known to the people of Rockland as a hard-working, kind, and loving individual that everyone loved. She was the sweetheart of this town, which is why her murder was such a shock to everyone. Luckily, crime scene investigators found some hair at the crime scene. Now all they need are 4 suspects. After doing some digging, a private investigator found some dirt on Knight and easily came up with 4 suspects. Elizabeth had been having an affair for quite some time, and people started finding out right before her death. Now it's time to meet the suspects. Suspect 1 is Robert Knight, Elizabeth's husband. The spouse is always the first to become a suspect, but Elizabeth was not wearing her wedding ring when she was murdered, which caused him to be even more suspicious. He might have known about the affair, which could be a motive. Suspect 2 is David Harris. David was a man that Elizabeth had been seeing outside of her marriage. He is a very wealthy man and could not understand why Elizabeth wouldn't leave her husband to be with him. His motive could have been that he was mad at Elizabeth for not fully wanting to be with him. Suspect 3 is Sarah Harris. Sarah is David's daughter. Her motive could have been that she found out about the affair and didn't want Elizabeth ruining her parents' relationship and their family. Suspect 4 is Rachel Corbett. Rachel is Elizabeth's best friend since kindergarten. We have gotten word that Elizabeth was always top of her class, amazing at sports and the arts, and was always loved by everyone. Rachel was extremely jealous of Elizabeth and hated that she was loved by 2 men. She always stood in Elizabeth's shadow, which could have been her motive. Now it's time to look at the VNTR DNA fingerprinting analysis for the 4 suspects. In order to determine who did it, we have gotten samples of the 4 suspects' DNA and used gel electrophoresis to separate the VNTR loci from the DNA. Then we will compare the suspects' alleles at each locus to the crime scene DNA and Elizabeth's. For locus 1, we can see that the DNA at the crime scene has an allele at the 2nd and 4th point, and so does Robert's and Rachel's. This means that they are still suspects. David and Sarah's DNA does not match up perfectly with the crime scene DNA, therefore they are no longer suspects. Because David is Sarah's father, he has to share at least one allele band with her. For this locus, Sarah and David share the bottom band, which means Sarah must get the top band from her mom. For the second locus, we can see again that David and Sarah share their top band, which means that Sarah got her bottom band from her mother. For locus 2, we can see that the DNA at the crime scene has an allele at the 2nd and 3rd point, and so does David's and Rachel's. Robert and Sarah's DNA do not match up with the crime scene DNA, so they are no longer suspects. Because David's DNA did not match up with the crime scene DNA in the first locus, he is no longer a suspect. Because Rachel's DNA matches up perfectly with the piece of hair at the crime scene for both locus, we know that her jealousy and envy got the best of her and she was the one who killed Elizabeth.